Alrighty. It looks like everything is working as intended. Hooray! Um, yep, still been playing with Restream a little bit. So if you are watching live on YouTube right now, I appreciate you checking it out on YouTube. Helps me figure things out. I'm going to be this next week um, trying to figure out how to get my stream alerts and things on YouTube, see if I can get that working, just so there's the same level of experience on the YouTube side as on the Twitch side. But yeah, good evening to everybody, and welcome to the 100th episode of the Pathfinders podcast. Hey, the Prisoner 07, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by and hanging out. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, 100 episodes. Uh, Nazareth and I started this about a little over 5 years ago now. Testing one, two, three. Oh, there you go. The Prisoner on Twitch and YouTube chat. Awesome. I see it. It's working. That's fantastic. Thanks so much for the help. Really appreciate you. But yeah, Nazareth and I started this, it was about February or March of 2021, I want to say. If I remember correctly. Yeah, I think that's right. And there's been a few slowdowns here, a few little breaks there. Nazareth is, off doing his own thing right now. I wish him nothing but the best. He moved to Arkansas and he's got a new job and a new place and stuff. And so he's got his hands full with all that. But he's always, he and I have talked and he's always welcome, when he has the time to come back and hang out with all of us. Um, but I appreciate all of you guys who have been watching the show, coming and hanging out with me in chat, coming and hanging out in the Discord, and joining me on my gameplay streams. I just appreciate all you guys being a part of the little community that I've built, and I enjoy hanging out with everybody. Let's see, what does that say? Oh, never mind. But yeah, I was gonna stream Star Citizen last night, but I'm off my narcotics for my shoulder, and as you can see, I'm out of my sling. I still don't have great range of motion, but it's getting better every day. It hurts pretty good to go past about this, in all directions. But unfortunately, it means that if I move around in my sleep, if my arm gets caught in the blanket, or I accidentally move my arm in my sleep, the pain will definitely wake me up. So I have not been sleeping well at all since I weaned myself off the narcs a few days ago. But I really don't like the way they make me feel. I'm just constantly sort of tired and drowsy. Careful streaming tonight. Your seatbelt is on. Yeah, I need to have like an airbag system or something. Yeah, safety first. Um, yeah. Uh, but yeah, so I just didn't have the energy last night to hop in game, but I will be hopping in game this next week. Hopefully going to be able to do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So if you're interested in joining me in game, would love to have you. I know my hours are a little bit different because I can't get on until the family goes off to bed. At around 10 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, which is where I'm at. But if you have the chance, would love to see you in game. Going to be doing some more blueprint hunting, and then once I get some of the blueprints I want and help you guys get some of the blueprints you want, I'd like to try my hand, get back into mining. It's been a while since I did mining on the regular at all, and just see what sort of resources we can find. Test the system and be able to get a good understanding of it. Especially because with 4.7.2, which should be coming out this next week, they're going to be adding a bunch more blueprints to missions, as well as adding more blueprints to the games. Yeah, that's what I've heard, Ashel. I've heard a lot of frustration with finding um, higher level um, materials, which definitely seems like it's a balance issue. But after the SCL that they did, was that Thursday? Yeah, it was Thursday, wasn't it? It kind of makes sense given what they're going for, that they want those materials to be rare and they want those high value items to be rare and to stay rare, given that they will degrade and they will lose integrity. Um, and I think it's just going to require a bit of fine tuning. But I also think that like certain things are just not functioning correctly. Like the amount of effort you put into doing Rockbreaker just to get a whole bunch of like really standard, it's like, yeah, those materials aren't exactly easy to find, but you're just getting like, I feel like it should have some sort of stratification that says like, okay, you're guaranteed to get, this much Cerberium, right? But, the range of how much you get, of a certain quality bracket can go from like here to here, and the other quality bracket is this much, so that way you're going to get at least some of the good stuff of Ceruleum, or what have you. um but it will vary how much you get, from playthrough to playthrough, but you're going to get some, you're going to get a lot more of the sort of more middle of the road stuff, and then get some low quality stuff as well. But like, to go through the whole thing and get like, I've seen people say like, yeah, I did the whole thing and I mined the whole thing and I didn't get a single bit of ore that was above like 500, which is what you get for dismantling something. I was like, holy, that would be frustrating as shit to me. And so I totally get what people are going through. But it, again, it's just going to be, it's going to take a long while for them to find the right balance. And they're going to be iterating on it a lot, and it's just going to be interesting to see where it goes and how it feels from patch to patch. We're just going to have, it sucks, but we're going to have to be patient, because they're collecting the data, but we have to provide them with the data. Hey, Puppet, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for stopping by and um, saying hi. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, the spread does feel like it's a little bit off. I've been getting seven. The prisoner says I've been getting 700 and 800 in Stanton, enough to make a weapon and more. Now I don't have to make a bunch of them to sell, which is okay for me. Yeah, and that makes sense. It would be really interesting to see like if they have like a chart, because like obviously, you're more likely to get, maybe we're more likely to find higher quality of more common minerals, for crafting certain things. But like maybe the probability just sort of falls off a cliff in terms of finding a high quality of things that are, relatively rare within the verse to find, period. Yeah, maybe that's how that works. Like if they've got uh visuals of the data and how that is all spread out, like, man, I would nerd out on that. And I know a lot of the people would, just to be able to sort of like, hey, this is what we're working with, and these are why these are in these sort of brackets, and it's working this sort of way, and this is the data that we have right now, and this is, what we might do given this information going forward. I'd love to get some insight into their process, because like, certain devs are really active on Spectrum, talking about things like Yogi and the flight model, and um, Ali and um, uh, Sylvan on the graphics and the engine and VR and everything. And so the devs that are working on this sort of thing, where there's a whole lot of data that goes into it, it would be really cool to get a decent little write up on it. Yeah, no, but that I like what they're thinking with Rockbreaker. I just I think that, it's like, okay, yeah, you're gonna get guaranteed finding this, or this mineral, whatever, that is harder to find out in the verse. But I think that there should be a little bit more reasonable spread in terms of quality when you do it, when it takes as long as it does. Yeah, and I like what they said about having more use for low quality stuff in the future. Yeah, yeah, and that's the other thing is, like, we can't pass judgment on it when we just got crafting Tier 0. There is so much more to come in with crafting, with refining, with all that, more mining changes and such. And so it's hard to like, yeah, I feel like the community isn't good at pulling their punches, when they should. People were fuming before we even got this SCL, and it's like, guys, chill the hell out. It's not even been 2 weeks. Like, calm the fuck down. Um, but gamers aren't known for patience. Um, but yeah, so this evening, for the 100th episode of the podcast, I wanted to go ahead and a lot of people have been talking about it in the content creator community. We've talked about it at length in my Discord. So if you're already in my Discord, you've probably seen my take on this. But I wanted to go over what we know regarding the upcoming Battlecruiser concept, because it's a big deal. Oh, Puppet pinged me regarding crafting. Yep. Yeah. Tier 1 FPS gear, tier 2 components, tier 3 ships. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what the different like crafters, or sorry, fabricators in terms of their size limits and like, how much variability we get in terms of the crafting machines that we can get from the one that we have right now up to the thing that it's basically a crafting building in your base, or a crafting module in your hangar, like how many different brackets will be in there in terms of size and what sort of changes in functionality will they have. Yeah, the prisoner. I totally get you with the mining. Yeah, it's a good chill gameplay loop, but like it's not something. I don't know how some people do it on a regular basis, day in, day out. It's like, oh man, that's I need that's one of the best things about Star Citizen is the variety. I won't do the same thing for more than a week at a time generally. I bounce around a little bit just to, try something new and explore a different part of the verse and so on. But yeah, so back to the topic. Obviously, the Battlecruiser has been a big point of discussion within the community ever since it was. I mean, we've known for a long time, but since it got mentioned more recently on Star Citizen Live twice in the latter half of last year. Um, and so I wanted to go over the information that we have regarding the battle cruiser, because a little bit of stuff recently came out as well, little hints and such. And what we know about battle cruisers in general, what we have heard from CIG regarding what I call the super capital ships, in particular the Bengal carrier, as well as my hot take on not selling the damn thing. Um, so yeah, let's go ahead and switch screens, and we will get into it. Let's see, and with our first citation. Okay, so the first mention regarding the battlecruiser, since forever ago, because the battlecruiser is a stretch goal, and we'll look at the stretch goals here in a second. The stretch goal from like 2013, I think, is when those were going on, if I remember correctly. We'll look at it here in a second. But during the Star Citizen Live Ship Showdown Q&A, that was back towards the end of August last year. And this is timestamp 58 minutes and 10 seconds. And again, if you're watching this live right now, this will get posted. It's live on my YouTube as well, but I'll have the VOD. I'll update the VOD on my YouTube so that, or I'll upload the video on my YouTube, a little bit of light editing. And in the description will be the show notes. So the links with the timestamps for everything you see, all these tabs up here in my browser, All that will be available for you to view just by looking at the show notes that will be in the description below. Here, let me hide the bookmarks bar. Okay. So let's listen to what Jared had to say first.
Point, which will undoubtedly be the biggest. Or thinking about it right now, if you go all, and this year we've succeeded. That said, as I'm thinking about it right now, if you go all the way back to our like original crowdfunding campaign, I'm talking about the original stretch goals, I think we're still on the hook for a Battlecruiser at some point, which will undoubtedly be the biggest ship in the game.
Which will undoubtedly be the biggest ship in the game. So I feel like that's a important take-home point. And we'll talk more about that later. But biggest ship in the game. But wait a minute, what about the Bengal? Because guess what? The Bengal was a stretch goal as well, described the exact same way. So is it going to be bigger than the Bengal? And what else is a stretch goal that this is apparently going to be bigger than? Because if they're on the hook for this one, they're on the hook for the others. But we know about the others, and so we'll look at that as well.
Are we still going to do that?
Yeah, it's looking really, really cool with the progress we've made on it so far. So I think the Battlecruiser, on paper, it's a big old ship, and we are. I hope I'm allowed to say this. We're in very early stages of kind of our concept work on the Battlecruiser at the moment. Too late, Jared. Sorry.
We're going for it now.
We have to do it. I mean, that's fine. That's fine. It's not coming this year. It's not coming anytime soon. Okay, so just don't want to get anybody's hopes up or anything.
It's a big ship. It needs a bunch of concept to get it right. Super happy with where it's going so far. I think it allows us to take a lot of the things that we've learned on our existing kind of ships and our larger ships and kind of wrap them into a big powerhouse and deliver something that we're kind of like we're super excited about. Not just in terms of like firepower, but what we can deliver from a ship this size with everything that we know now. So yeah,
it's unlike any of our existing capital ships. I think it's gonna be pretty cool.
Or it will be because you're still working on it. Yeah. Right. Just I backdoored into a subject here. Let's just be real clear. Trying really hard not to do concept ships anymore. 2025 looks like it's going to be, again, it would be impossible to launch a new concept at this point. So our first year without concept sales, we don't want to do any more concept promotions.
Hey, Northern Trooper, good to see you, buddy. Thanks so much for the sub. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the support.
Ever again, we might have to do our last one for the Battlecruiser whenever that comes and whatnot. But this is an exciting kind of big shift in our ships. We're flight ready or bust. Get the old ones that we need to deliver done. Make new ones flight ready, and try to avoid concept promotions whenever possible. But realistically, if a Battlecruiser is as big as you're going to say it is, we'll probably have to do that one as a concept at some point. But we'll let future us worry about that whenever that day comes down the line. Not anytime soon. This is what you get, Ben.
Okay, so from there, obviously they're saying, yeah, it's big. It's going to be big. But then they talked about, what they've learned from their other big ships, their other capital ships. And so we're going to look at those in a little bit as well, because there are other big capital ships, that are part of the stretch goals that Jared mentioned. And so Jared mentioned that, they're on the hook for the Battlecruiser because it's one of the stretch goals. But it would be the last concept. The goal is for it to be the last concept, which means that those other ships that haven't been delivered wouldn't be concepts when they are released, that they intend for them to be straight to flyable. And that's an important distinction because we have seen those ships and we know about them. And so this is the last one that we haven't seen that's on the stretch goals that CIG is required to deliver. But we need to talk about the manner in which they are required to deliver them. So let's go to the stretch goals page. And if we control F, we can go to, let's look at the Bengal. So first things first, the Bengal, the 5.5 million stretch goal that was hit on November 19th, 2012. Oh man. Star Citizen will feature the Bengal carrier as a playable ship class. So they are required to make the Bengal carrier playable in game. And CIG has talked about how that would happen in the past. And then, but they also, at the $6 million stretch goal, they say the Bengal carrier will be unlocked for persistent universe play. But that's all they say. Playable ship class, persistent universe play. So that's all that is legally required of them, that we are able, yeah. Well, the goals, these stretch goals are, that they are promises, but they're just saying that they have to do it. Like right here, Star Citizen will launch with 100 systems. Like obviously things changed. But if they're saying that they're on the hook for the Battlecruiser because of ye old stretch goals, well, then they are similarly on the hook for the other things that are described similarly. Now, obviously, we're not going to launch with 100 star systems. The scope of the game has changed, but that's why they're making Planet Tech V5, Genesis, all that sort of stuff in order to make that process, a whole lot faster. But so let's say the Battlecruiser. Battlecruiser right here. The $17 million stretch goal, which was August 13th, 2013. So about a little, not quite a year later. Star Citizen will feature an additional flyable ship class, the Battlecruiser. Flyable, playable. They're just the descriptive words saying that they will be in-game and players will be able to use them. Now, let's see what else is also a stretch goal. What about a cruiser? The $4.5 million stretch goal from November 17th. Star Citizen will feature an additional playable ship class, the Cruiser. Yeah, Puppet's right. Yeah, the CIG will need to eventually deliver on all of them. That there's, maybe someone will try to sue them again, but there's already been lawsuits and CIG's won. RepairBot, our AMX1 or AMX1, I think it was. But the language right here is very clear that it needs to be playable. They can't just make it an NPC only ship. It needs to be playable. The escort carrier. The $15 million stretch goal. Let's see, that's August 1st of 2013. Star Citizen will feature an additional ship class, the escort carrier. So this is the only one that doesn't say playable or flyable. But the Bengal and the Bengal carrier, the Battlecruiser, and the Cruiser are all listed as playable and flyable. But playable. Playable is also used to describe ships that they have made for sale. 4 additional ship classes that came along with the Cruiser. The Idris Corvette, which is now a frigate. Origin M50, Drake Interplanetary Caterpillar, and destroyers. Let's say flyable. So flyable Battlecruiser, flyable shuttles, an additional flyable ship, the Drake Cutlass, additional flyable ship, the Aegis Dynamics Retaliator. Let's see, the Misk Starfarer, the Anvil Gladiator. And so this was all before the idea of selling ships to fund the development of the game. So these stretch goals came out as, hey, you give us this much money and we'll make this part of the game. None of this is saying that we are going to make this for you for sale. That didn't start until years after this, or a while after this. So that's not really a thing. That people have tried to make the argument to me like, well, all these other ships, they sold them. And it's like, yeah, but they weren't required to as part of them being stretch goals. They just had to make sure they added them to the game. The selling them is a later thing. And that's why later on, they talked about how the Bengal would be how players could get the Bengal in game, and it wasn't due to buying it. You'd have to acquire it, so to speak. But let's see what else was said about the Battlecruiser recently. Let's see. So I think I got the right timestamp for this one. This is Star Citizen Live, lots of ship talk from November 27th, 2025. Essentially very recently, less than 5 months ago, or about 5 months ago, I think it was 5-6 months. And we're at timestamp 1 hour, 22 minutes, and 10 seconds, I think is the right one. So let's see what Jared has to say here.
Back away from this one because it looks like a hard
He's making his mind up.
Trying to work out which
settled
this
in.
is.
Yeah.
I love these awkward conversations they have. It's so fun.
Oh, it's one of them.
Oh no.
Oh no, it's me. I'm in trouble.
Oh. Don't say a word.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna need some more info on the Battlecruiser there, Chief. Don't say a word. Don't say a word. I'll say this so if somebody gets angry at me, they can just come to me. The Battlecruiser, for those of you who don't know, is our last concept. It's from the original.
Again, last concept, reiterating that. Well, Star John Grim, good to see you, buddy. Glad you're coming to hang out. I'm a dad. I'm a full-time dad to small children. The idea of having my own capital ship and being able to go out in space and the utter quiet of walking around a ship all by myself with no one to fucking bother me. No one throwing, it's like, oh, so nice. I mean, I could melt a whole lot of stuff and maybe I'd have the credit to sell it if they sell it. I don't think they will. I think it's a terrible idea, but we'll get more into that. But again, he's saying the last concept. And so we're gonna talk more about what else CIG has coming that apparently isn't going to be a concept. I don't think they would be making these very clear statements regarding the Battlecruiser being a concept, given the other ships that we know about, and we'll see more about those later, that apparently aren't going to be concepts. Jared is reiterating straight to flyable, is the plan going forward. So let's listen to more of what they have to say.
Crowdfunded campaign. It's up. Don't know, is our last concept. It's from the original crowdfunded campaign. We didn't do any concept ships this year. It's our intention to never do another concept ship again, other than the Battlecruiser. And when it comes,
I'm gonna watch the chat for this.
being a giant military style thing, if only there was a giant military style event that would be appropriate to reveal such things, that's probably where you might expect to learn more about it. And definitely not here, where we've already spilled the beans on too much of the 2026 schedule.
Did you confirm the manufacturer then or not?
Well, we're not revealing that.
Wait, did you just confirm it for 2026?
I feel like we're not
Did
doing
I?
2026.
Did I? No.
You didn't.
Citizen Joel's like, open development. Open development doesn't mean we just say everything that comes into our brain. That's never been what open development is. It's never what it's going to be. Open development. It's been very open. All right. Have you identified a stop?
Okay. So again, Battlecruiser, last concept. I love when Jared does that. Battlecruiser last concept, they said, oh, when would that be coming? A military themed event, Invictus Launch Week, obviously, apparently Invictus Launch Week 2026, which is why some of the more recent little things that have been popping up are very interesting, because it was a surprise to me what happened, or what popped up. But again, like they said concept, and promotion doesn't mean it has to sell the Battlecruiser. It doesn't have to mean that, especially given what the Battlecruiser likely is. Like he just said in the previous one that the Battlecruiser will be the biggest ship in the, likely the biggest ship in the game. But we already know about the Bengal. We know about the Bengal's dimensions. And the Bengal is one of the same stretch goals that the Battlecruiser is. The Bengal also has to be flyable. The cruiser also has to be flyable. The escort carrier also has to be flyable. And so the question is, and this is part of my hot take that we'll get to, get more into in a little bit. But the question is, are they actually going to sell them? And why would they sell them? And it's not as straightforward and simple as we might think. But the important thing is the context with which these things were said. The stretch goals occurred before they started selling ships, like in order to fund the game. Like they're funding the game through the stretch goals and raising money that way, back when the project was a very, very different thing. And so nothing was ever intended out of the stretch goals that everything in the stretch goals would be sold. That's why, no one could ever, force them to be like, oh, you said, and it's like, no, it just says that it will be in the game and players will be able to play / fly it. Yeah. Starjup, you bring up a good point, and I don't remember if I kept that in my search for everything I could find surrounding the Battlecruiser, the cruiser, the escort carrier, the Bengal, how those things would be presented to us in game. I did find a tidbit from way back when that said they did want most of their largest capital ships to at least have some I forget the exact verbiage, but like hangar capacity or whatever, and like, not be carriers like the Bengals. But there's another question. Maybe was it this one? No. Maybe I didn't save it. But you do make a good point, and maybe I'll have to try and find that one again, because I found it inadvertently. But it was a question regarding it was like maybe a 10 for the chairman, or maybe it was something else, I forget. But they asked about, like, are there going to be capital ships that are more firepower based, I think was how that was worded. The question was worded, talking about battleships and missile cruisers. And Chris Roberts answered it, and he said, yes, they do want to have stuff like that. They're not quite sure yet. He said that we do want, like, our largest ships like that to, always have some sort of hangar or fighter capacity. I don't remember the exact verbiage that he used, but basically, like, he said that, kind of like the Javelin has a hangar that was originally built for, was the Redeemer that it was originally built for, or was it the Vanguard? Do you remember? Either way, it has a hangar. It's decently sized, but it's the Javelin is more focused around its weapons, its guns. And so ostensibly, like, the cruiser and the Battlecruiser would be, again, more firepower focused, but they should still have some hangar capacity, obviously not carrier focused like an actual carrier, but we don't know. I would imagine, like, if you guys know, like on the Bengal, how it has the main, hangar is in the wide part, and then you have like the kind of launch tube area, but the main hangar is in the wide part, and there's two decks, the storage and then the ready launch and recovery area. But then above that, there's also an external flight deck that goes into a hangar for the CAP, Combat Air Patrol. And so, like, they have, we've actually seen it a couple times where they're coming and going, landing on that top little flight deck to come and go on the, and we don't know how ships get up there, like if they go up on an elevator or what. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a hangar that's probably that sized, and they've got, they can launch their own, cap very quickly, for additional fighter screen type support. Obviously not like multiple wings like a Bengal, but a small squadron, give or take. I don't know, but that's a good point, Star Jump, and Chris Roberts did say that, and obviously it was a long time ago, but that's what we have. Yeah, we've seen those big, massive lifts that are on the left and right side. We know that they go down into like the storage part of the hangar, but we don't know if if those ones go up farther to that cap one, or if there's an additional set of lifts. Like, we haven't gotten to see a lot of the interior. So it'll be really interesting to see more of it eventually. So let's. Oh, I forgot about this one. Let's listen to this timestamp. This is the same ship talk at 1:35:47. Oh yeah, this is the one where someone asked when the Idris and Polaris are going to be in game to purchase.
When are we getting the Polaris and other newly released capital ships into PU shops? That goes back to the answer I gave earlier today. Not every ship is going to UEC shops. It's just not. The ships will be attainable in game. These ships will be earnable in game. That's not the same as every ship goes into a store. This is one of those things that he'll forgive me if I speak on his behalf, but I've literally heard him say these words. It's like the idea that you go into a Hertz rent-a-car and rent a Nimitz class aircraft carrier, like it just makes the brain itch. It's like there should be other ways. That's where crafting comes in. That's where, to an extent, at the moment, Wicklow comes in. So like this, and then other ways, reputation gains and stuff like that. There'll be many more ways for you to attain these ships other than just UEC. It's just, frankly, boring and not particularly interesting, which are, I guess, is the same thing, and just not diegetic with the universe that we're building to put every single thing into a UEC shop. The idea that you go to New Deal and pick up an Idris is kind of silly. So finding other ways, but they will all be attainable in game, one way or another, or in multiple ways.
All be attainable in game one way or another. And he talks about the diegeticness of the universe. Like, people, have said like, oh, it's just a game, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, CIG is still committed to this, this being this believability of the universe. If you go to Starchives, which actually just got updated not long ago to be all the way out through 2025. I don't think they have anything so far this year up on Starchives for search. But if you search the word believable or believability, it comes up hundreds and hundreds of times across Star Citizen's development. It's insane. They care about believability. They care about having, obviously you go out to the point of realism or whatever, and you bring them back to the point of fun. But the point is that you went out to the point of realism. You went out to the point of believability, and you brought it back to fun. And so this quote is, again, why I think that there's probably a threshold of what will be sold to players for real life cash, that they will make things that are only attainable in game. And it makes more sense. Now, whether they're, for me, I don't want the Battlecruiser to be crafted. I don't want the Bengal to be crafted. I like the old idea that we'll look at here in a little bit of them being found derelict. I think it's silly to think that RSI would give you the blueprint to their super capital ships or Anvil to make our own. I think it's silly to think that the UEE would allow that. And they have said that as much, like, if you do get it, the UEE isn't going to let you keep it. Yeah. Believability, not perfect realism. Yeah. And sorry, it's essential Asa. Am I saying it right? Essential Asa, and like, to me, think back to the 1.0 presentation, and I'm sure everybody's, I think everybody's probably watched the 1.0 presentation, but think about the level of hype that the 1.0 presentation, that the base building, station building part of those presentations built. And those, they didn't sell stations. They didn't sell bases or anything like that. You can buy a Pioneer, which is a big ship, but it's not anywhere close to what a battlecruiser would be. But what that was is marketing to sell gameplay, which sells the game. Hey, Maverick69, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Hope the garden is doing well. And that's why, like, if we look, and we're going to look at the funding for CIG and Star Citizen here in a little bit too. That's why I think that part of, making it the promotion for the Battlecruiser not be about selling it, but being about how you attain it in game. I think that drives hype, which then drives sales. Because what has driven the sales over the last year and before that, but especially over 2025, and right now, because we're still setting records, has been the fact that the game is more stable. It is more playable. Some areas are not. Obviously, we're well aware of that. It's not a perfect score. But the fact that the game is more stable and more playable and more people are playing it because there has been hype generated around the game being stable and playable and having more to do. Now, if they come along at Invictus launch week and they release the Battlecruiser concept, and it isn't you are buying it, is like, here's the concept of what this ship is. Here is the concept of how you will be able to get this ship. Just like here is the concept of how you will be able to build a base and then build a space station. That's far more hype to me than just selling the damn thing. And I think that would drive far more sales and far more revenue for CIG ultimately than just selling, a limited number. Because in reality, it would be a couple dozen max, which is crazy to think about. And that's not, we think about it as a lot of money, but it's really not that much. Yeah. Well, and but Exume, we're gonna get to the Idris, because that's the other part is people are like, well, they sell the Idris, they sell the Javelin. It's like, not even remotely comparable. But let's keep going. So, the things that came out recently, things that changed recently that made this even more interesting for me, that was very unexpected, and I'll explain why it was more unexpected later, was the tracker that a lot of people have in their Discord. I have it in my Discord, that shows you whenever there's any sort of update to the website, or any devs post anything on Spectrum, or it could cannibalize other sales. Absolutely, that's a good point. The portfolio for Anvil Aerospace got updated. Now, this is not, it got updated on April 15th, but this is an old portfolio. The old one is this is 12, 13 years old. And so they didn't update the whole thing. Most of this is original. But what they did, one of the things they did update, they updated a little bit around the Gladiator to make it more contemporary, fit the fact that we're like 12 years later from when this first came to be. But they added this update here at the bottom. Update: it is believed that Anvil will be revealing a brand new ship in 2956 this year that industry leaders have described as the future of modern naval warfare. Yeah, Sergeant Grim, you're totally right. It could just be revealed. Yeah, it might not be sold. It could just be revealed. We have no idea what they're going to do. But given that they haven't said sale, they've said promotion, but not sale. And given how they've talked about other things in the past, I'm of the mind that I don't think that they're going to sell it. I'm of the mind where I don't think they should sell it. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. But so we know Anvil is releasing a ship, and they had talked about. They had added Anvil to the list of, I think it was in this lots of ship talk. They ticked off all the manufacturers that were releasing ships this year. But they said, or releasing, or, that what have you. I forget the verbiage, but like they did say Anvil. They said Aegis. We know about there's like an Aegis ship that they kind of related to the Hammerhead and such. So we do know something is coming from Anvil. We don't know if there's multiple things coming from Anvil or if it's just this, but we know this is coming from Anvil. But then, like that, I think it was that day or the day after, this got added to the Galactopedia, and it's just the Odin, but it says Odin, spacecraft, human, pending review by the ARC research team, human vehicle. But then up here in the URL, it says Anvil Odin. So so we know that there is something that is a ship by Anvil called the Odin, and we know that Anvil is releasing or is revealing a brand new ship in 2056 that is the future of modern naval warfare. And if you remember, several Invictus launch weeks ago, I actually did a video that included this, but they did have some voice, some talking at the I think it was at Tobin in New Babbage, talking about a new partnership between the UE and Anvil at the naval shipyards on MacArthur. And everybody's like, "Ooh, is there going to be a big ship from Anvil coming?" Well, maybe that had to do with this, and maybe they stopped working on it. Maybe they changed something. Oh, Sergeant Graham says some unsubstantiated murmurs of the Legionnaire entity string being found in the Evo build, but I didn't see it with my own eyes, so take it with a grain of salt. Oh gosh. Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought they said that they did pre-production on the Liberator at some point in the monthly reports last year. I'd have to go back and look. I could remember. I remember seeing it, or I thought I remembered seeing it, but I just know that like they haven't been mentioning it in recent months. But with them mentioning hacking in the last monthly report, it wouldn't surprise me that if they're working on like hacking Tier 0 for the PU, that they are also putting the Legionnaire back into production. Yeah, pre-production is last we have so hard. Reconcept pass and team building, essentially. Okay, cool. Yeah, Northern Trooper hacking. Yeah, the prisoner, the number of when they sell the whole limited ships, it's based essentially on like an algorithm on how many backers or accounts there are. And so it's gone up over the years. That's why, like when they sold the Idris way back when, it was like in 250, and now it's more than that. It's several hundred at a time. But the Javelin is still limited to. I don't think the Javelin has broken 100. Based off of the estimates that I've seen, it's still limited in the dozens. So yeah. So we know that Anvil has a future of modern warfare being revealed in 2956. So ostensibly revealed at Invictus Launch Week, like Jared was talking about. That Anvil also has something called the Odin that is brand new to the Galactopedia. But yeah, so let's talk about the context. I hope Odin is first in a class or modular. But seeing we have no idea how many javelins have been awarded in terms of the referral rewards. Yeah, yeah. Well, Algrid has bought 3 javelins war bond, which is just nuts. But Algrid's been around forever. Yeah. So let's look at the lore surrounding here. We're going to start with the Idris. Because people have said, well, they sell the Idris, and they sell the Javelin. Why wouldn't they sell a Battlecruiser? So let's look at the context surrounding how the Idris is sold to players. So civilian launch, and this is from Jump Point. Jump Point 8 issue 6. So I want to say this is one in 2020. But if you want a copy of this, you can hit me up, ping me in my Discord, and I'll upload it to my Discord if you don't have access to the jump points. But so, civilian launch. For the first 200 years of production, Idrises were reliably scrapped upon decommissioning, a requirement specified by law for all capital assets by the early UE government. So, the early UE government said that when capital ships were taken out of service, that they were required to be scrapped. They didn't sell them to anyone. They were scrapped, and they reused some of the material to make new ships and stuff. But that's what they did. While Aegis's shipbreakers were forbidden from salvaging and reusing systems, they were able to recycle roughly 35% of the scrap tonnage in the construction of newly produced frigates. This life cycle was drastically altered in 2801 with the passage of the first Surplus Act that gave approved civilian organizations the rights to bid on properly demilitarized but still functional spacecraft up to and including destroyer-class vessels. So, yes, the Idris is either demilitarized. We're going to get to that, but also the P is a civilian production. So in 2801 was the first time, essentially a little over 150 years ago, was the first time that you could get a approved civilian organization could bid on a demilitarized ship up to destroyer class. So the Idris frigate and the Javelin destroyer. Do we really think that the marketing team was constrained by the Idris sale lore, or do you think that the lore was created to support the marketing team's sales? This is not new lore. This is just the most recent version of it. This has always been what the Idris lore was, and this is part of the reason and the believability of why they limit the sales of them. It's a marketing thing. If you make it limited, you're able to charge more. You charge people more for it. It's just a marketing technique, but it also makes it more believable. When people are like, well, they sell hundreds at a time. Well, if you think about how big the UEE is, it does make sense that there would be thousands of surplus Idrises, considering the Idris has been in service across like multiple flights across like 400 years. And the UEE has like trillions of people. The UEE military is, millions, if not billions of people. It's insane how big the UEE is. So it absolutely makes sense that there would be, potentially thousands of Idrises flying around, whether surplus or you're an hour late, Danger Hobo, go haze yourself. But this was the first Surplus Act, but properly demilitarized. In the case of the era's Idrises, this meant the permanent disabling of the keel-mounted gun and the removal of all classified subsystems, such as military spec targeting software. The law was primarily passed to allow citizens to purchase former freighters, and the initial reception to the available former military frigates was generally cold. Within 2 decades, however, the need for larger-scale fighting ships had become greater, and Aegis was forced to significantly expand its investment in mining corporations in order to make up for the lost scrap resources. So Aegis was having a hard time keeping up with production due to selling these decommissioned frigates and such rather than recycling them. Simultaneously, additional citizen armament laws loosened the restrictions on what equipment could be sold off and to whom it could be sold to, gradually going from authorized militia forces to corporate and finally private entities. By 2875, so essentially 80 years ago, the demand for civilianized Idrises, combined with expanding life cycles for existing military ships, had outstripped the Navy's ability to decommission existing ships. The result of this schism was the launch of the first ever Idris Peacekeeper, Idris P, which is what we are able to buy now. You can't buy an Idris M anymore, except for there's one pack that it comes in. It's like, I don't remember if it's a $15,000 or the $25,000 one. Yeah. You can buy a surplus tank, but a surplus tank is not the same as a surplus battlecruiser. Not even remotely close. These are not like things. You can't compare them. A purpose-built ship nearly identical in form to the military model, retroactively called the Idris Military or Idris M, lacking only the main gun mount, which could be readily rebuilt on the secondary market, because they did tell us that you could get the Idris M railgun. We still haven't been able to buy that. You can't buy it. The T and K kits give you the laser and the torpedo kit, but you can't buy with cash this Idris railgun. But because it's military tech, but it's a secondary market. But somehow we're gonna sell the Battlecruiser, even though we still can't buy the Idris railgun. For the first time, civilian organizations could purchase not only the increasingly limited number of UEN surplus ships, so you can get a UEN surplus ship that is essentially to the P standard, but also commission the construction of their very own spacecraft directly from Aegis. The popularity of the Aegis platform, already cushioned by generations of developed support systems, exploded and had quadrupled by the turn of the century. And this is why there's so many available. They really, there's a couple hundred sold at Invictus Launch Week and among Invictus Launch Week and IAE every year. But it's because Aegis produces the civilian model while also still decommissioning the older generations of Idris and converting them to essentially to be Idris Ps. And the people who had the Idris M and Idris P on every blade of grass. So the people who bought the Idris M when they sold it the one time way back when, or have spent just an absurd amount of money on that package to get an Idris M, like they're the only ones that have the Idris M. But so there's the context of how we acquire the frigate, the Idris frigate, which is, pardon me, sorry. The Idris frigate was developed in the mid 2500s. It is 400. It is a nearly 400-year-old design, and we're looking at an Anvil Odin, or an Anvil ship, which is likely the Odin that's supposed to be brand new. Yeah, and so here's the lore regarding the sale of the Javelin. Now, obviously, they changed this a bit in that the Javelins that we have are not going to be they aren't stripped down, and that they have no weapons or components. But I guarantee you that the Javelins that we get will be similar to the Idris P, in that our Javelins that we bought will be demilitarized versions of the UE Navy Javelins. We're not going to have the same armament. It'll certainly be sizable, but we're not going to have the same level of armament that the Javelins will. It's equivalent to say, for crafting. Not even a light in your rack, on the Terra. I imagine the player-owned Javelins will probably have their hard points be a level or so below, what the UE Javelins are. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they had less armor, or they had fewer shields, or something like that. We don't know how it's going to work out, but we already know that the Idris. Congratulations, you received 100 messages today with Restream Chat. You're only allowed a mini nuke. Yeah. Glad Restream seems to be working well. I just need to figure out the stream alerts on the YouTube side. Yeah. But yeah, so this is, they talk about, but it's very similar description to what we just read, and this is older, but the Idris stuff is still current. So when we get our Javelin eventually, because we know it isn't coming until after Squadron 42, at least from what John Crew last said, I wouldn't be surprised if I would assume that they are going to hold to a similar version of this, but more Idris size, so that way you're not having to, okay, well, I have the Javelin that has engines and a power plant, and I have to buy shields and weapons and all that stuff. So, the Aegis Dynamics Javelin class destroyer. Pardon me. Subject: new command ship, UE Javelin destroyer sale. To Commander Axel Stiltier from Daniel May. Commander, I know we haven't spoken much, but Lieutenant Nylar said I should pass this information directly on to you. Word has been going around the cats that you've been looking to acquire a new command ship for the fleet, and my contact in the UE, not sure if you remember Matilda from the Citizen Day event, let me know that the Navy is planning to sell off an allotment of battle-tested Javelin destroyers to qualified organizations and private enterprises. I can't help but think this would be the perfect fit for us. As you may already know, the Javelin is the Empire's premier light warship, but what you might not know is that they are built and designed with modular segments in mind, allowing them to be repurposed for a number of roles. It'll be interesting to see how modularity works out with the Javelin. Hopefully that's still a thing. Now, while a surplus Javelin would make an excellent flagship, it's worth noting that the ships they're selling have seen hard service against the Vanduul. They are battle-hardened and somewhat worse for wear, and have been stripped of weapon systems. Nevertheless, I have full faith that with our people working together, we could repair and upgrade the destroyer to be one of the most formidable in the verse. I'm attaching details about the destroyer specifications and deck plans for your review, blah, blah, blah. So, very similar verbiage to what was used regarding the Idris and how they started selling it demilitarized and such, and without the you still can't get it with the railgun, but you can get it on secondary markets and such. And I would imagine something similar is still going to happen to the Javelin. Maybe the stock turrets that come with it, the stock weapons that come with it, are the next size down. Something to that effect. You could upgrade them on the secondary market in game. You earn them in game. You can work your way up to having a essentially mil-spec Javelin in game, but the one you get from buying it isn't mil-spec. Yeah, I really like the modularity on the new Aurora, and it makes me hopeful for a Avenger Titan Mark II with modularity, because the Titans were supposed to be modular as well. But they always said back then, that time they just made variants because that's what they could do. And a similar size ship would be pretty cool to have the same functionality as the Aurora, but for an Avenger. And the Mustang. So, pardon me. So there's the context regarding the how the Javelin and the Idris are sold. And the Javelin and the Idris are so much smaller than what a battlecruiser should be, especially given that Jared said it would be the largest ship in the verse when it releases. So let's before we get into this part, actually, let's talk about, because we talked about how much smaller the Javelin and the Idris would be than the cruiser. Let's talk about how big the cruiser might be, and look at some scale of things. And for that, we're going to look at, is this the right one? Okay. We're going to look at part of the live gameplay reveal from CitizenCon 2954 for Squadron 42. Actually, before we do that, let's watch this. This is called The Scale of Things to Come. This is from 9 years ago. And when, and I don't remember if this is all completely accurate in terms of the Vanduul ships, but in terms of the other ships that are UE, it's otherwise still accurate. But this is from December 16th, 2016. Look at how big the Idris is. And I think it's actually a little bit bigger than that now. I think it's like 240, 250 something meters, but yeah, are we due for a new scale video? Yep. But I think a lot of people forget, and because when we're flying around in space, scale doesn't translate as well as we'd like it to. And so I think people forget how big things are in Star Citizen. And when Jared says the Battlecruiser will be the biggest ship in the game, but it's coming out as a concept, but there are other ships that have to come out that are along the same level as the Battlecruiser, but would essentially be smaller per Jared, until somebody says otherwise. It's crazy to think about. They didn't have the Javelin in there, but the Javelin is 450 meters. So the Javelin is about half the length of the Bengal. The Bengal is 990 meters long. It's nearly 4 times the length of an Idris. An Idris could fit in the hangar if it could fit through the door. But the Bengal is 990 meters long. The Javelin is 450 meters. Okay, the Idris is listed on the wiki as 240. So the right there is 237. So close enough. But that's nuts. It's nearly 1 kilometer long, and that's just the length. It's not the width, the height, the mass. When you think about how massive these things are, which is just insane. And we have to look at the other contemporary sort of super capitals in comparison to the Bengal and the Idris and the Javelin. And given that those other super capitals, along with the Bengal, have to be flyable, playable ships in game, it gives you an idea of how big the Battlecruiser should be, relatively. And, maybe Anvil's, if it is an Anvil ship, assuming it is an Anvil ship, maybe its design philosophy will change that in that it's, more rectangular, blockier, isn't as long, but is taller or wider or something like that. But, the scope of how massive these ships are is just nuts. And so I thought this would be a good thing to look at for scale. Yeah, I don't think personally it'll be bigger than the Bengal. I think it'll be close. But the only thing is Jared said biggest ship in the game. And the Bengal's in game. And the Bengal has to be flyable, playable, just like the Battlecruiser does. So, but we don't know. And given like this is World War II in space, in World War II, carriers got big. They were pretty big, but Battlecruisers were, real big as well. Yeah. Well, and maybe it wasn't precise with the language, but that's all we've got to go on. Until we get more, we don't know. But at the same time, he said it's going to be a concept. It's going to be the biggest ship in the game. And we, even though these other ships, and this is part of my prediction that we'll get to at the end, even though these other ships aren't in the game, they will be. And we have to look at how big they are. Here, let's back up a few seconds. And
X-axis. That should bring that moiler into your field of fire.
Okay, so assuming this is to scale, and it might not be, maybe it's close, maybe it's not. Looking at the back, you can see from the back profile, obviously the engine nacelles on the Bengal are much larger than those on, what people like. Everybody's like, oh, it's a Bengal variant. It's like, no, they're not variants. They are their own ships. They just share the same RSI super capital design language in a lot of the, style guide. But this is the UES Argus, which is an escort carrier. You can see another one over here. I don't think we get the name on it. And then you can see one of the cruisers here, and we know that these are cruisers over here. But you can see that the rear end, like the body of it, isn't all that different in size to the cruiser. Looks maybe a bit bigger, but the big change in size is in these engine nacelles coming off both the lower ones, but then the fact that the Bengal has this upper row that the cruiser does not, also makes the Bengal that much more massive in terms of mass. But the hull is a very similar shape. It's slightly different, but very similar.
Corvers.
This is another good shot. So you can see the Corvus cruiser here. Here's that escort carrier he just told to move, is right back here. I don't think you can see the other escort carrier in this image, but it's back over here somewhere. You can see a cruiser right here and another one right here. So in this shot, it seems in this fleet there's 2 escort carriers and 3 cruisers. And people are like, oh, well, these say battleships. And well, I think that's just a typo because it says Battleship Company. And right now we know that there's no battleships in the UE Navy. Yeah. And let's see. So you can see, let's see if it gets close enough.
Redirect to fill the gap and take those gunboats off integrity.
Oh, a little bit too far back.
Redirect to fill the gap and take those.
So you can see, and we're going to look at this in detail, but if you get the like 4K and zoom in on this, it says CA, which is cruiser. And so the Raiden over here is a is actually a Javelin destroyer, and somehow it got put into a battleship company, even though, and this one says I think it says frigate company, but it's also the Banshee is a destroyer. But here's the Argus again. You can see that's CVE, which is escort carrier, and then CV for the crew Gary, which is fleet carrier. Yeah, well, and this could be subject to change. This is just what we have so far. Who knows? But this is what we have so far. And there is lore to go with these things. We're going to watch that here in a second. But if you look at this, if we go by the assumption that these are to scale, along with the obviously we can't put them next to each other, but you can look at the body of the Corvus, the Integrity, and the shape of it compared to the Bengal. It is a very similar shape. It is a very similar hull. And the way carriers were first designed is that they are actually cruiser hulls that were converted to become carriers. And so it makes a sort of sense that with the UE developing new ships and using RSI to develop their super capital ships, that they do the economy and everything, as well as economy of scale and production, that they would probably want to simplify things in making, okay, we're going to make, these hulls, and then certain ones will go on to become cruisers, certain ones will go on to become Bengals, and we can make, stop the construction partway through, and some of those will be escort carriers, but it simplifies and makes the production process more cost effective. It's part of World War II history. Again, this is World War II in space.
Those gunboats off integrity.
Look at those fucking turrets. And so he's moving this ship forward to help provide additional support to Integrity, this other cruiser over here, due to these, what he calls gunboats that are making runs on Integrity. You can see shield impacts and stuff. But look at the size of these turrets. These are triple barrel turrets compared to the quad turret of the Bengal. We don't know if these are the same caliber, but still, they're fucking huge. But even these, like, ancillary turrets on the side are freaking big. The secondary guns. Boom, 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 boom. Absolutely wrecking those Vanduul gunboats or corvettes or whatever they are.
Scimitar, your turn to play bait. Scimitar.
There we are. CEVE, UES Argus, CV. And we can't see anything on the cruiser, but yeah, because that's the interest right there. Okay, let's move on to this one. So this is a video done by Jail. Jail is a lore aficionado. He is like Star Citizen's language expert. Yeah, we didn't field battlecruisers in World War II, but in World War I, battlecruisers were very common. And I think they were pretty much all phased out by pretty much everybody during World War II. They didn't like build new ones, but like World War I's ones were still in in service, or post World War I ones were still in service. But yeah. But Jail did this video regarding the this one's from CitizenCon 2954, but he also did this one when we saw that same scene from the I Held the Line video. And so we got additional update information, and so that's why I did this one. Both the links are going to be in the show notes, so you can watch both of them. But Jail did a really good job breaking all this down. So we're going to watch the full almost 3 minutes of this, so that way we understand what these ships are, because the context is important. Yeah, and I will tag him. He hasn't been doing much with Star Citizen lately. I know he took a new job and has been very busy a while back. So I wish him nothing but the best. But he did a lot of episodes of the Lore Citizen podcast with Algrid and Astropub, Astro Historian, Paul. But he's done a bunch of language guides and other stuff. Really, really smart dude. Hey, Sergeant Grimm, no worries, man. Thanks for stopping by. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, I'd love to come hang out. You just hit me up in Discord whenever. I'm a full-time stay-at-home dad now, so my schedule in the evenings is a bit more relaxed. But I can also while I can make some stuff work. But yeah, thanks for stopping by. Really appreciate your input. Thanks for being a part of the conversation. Hope you guys are doing well over there at Star Jump. Here, we're gonna give you. I think this will work in Restream. We'll see. If not, I'm gonna have to figure that out. Okay. So that doesn't work if I put it into Restream. Anyway, if you don't already follow Star Jump and Star Jump Grim, absolutely go check them out. Well, now I know that command isn't working when I type it into the Restream chat. I guess I'm going to have to... I could just put it directly into the Twitch chat. Okay. There we go. Works in Twitch. Hey, Maverick, do you want to be a mod? Okay. Hey, Eric Wallison, thanks so much. Yeah, the shoulder is actually doing pretty good. As long as I don't use it the wrong way. It's quite sore, but I'm getting more range of motion with each day. I'm just trying to do more and more tasks of daily living to get some more mobility back into it. I'll be restricted for like 6 weeks to 1 pound worth of resistance in terms of lifting with this arm. But I start PT again this next week, so I'm doing good. It's just the hard part is sleeping, because I'll inadvertently move it or roll over onto it a little bit, or it'll get caught in the blankets while I'm sleeping and it'll pull on it. And because I'm not on any narcotic pain meds anymore, it hurts a lot more when I do the wrong thing with it than it did before. So let's watch this video from Jail so we can learn more about the cruiser and escort carrier in these scenes.
Last year, I made 3 deep dives into the I Held the Line trailer. In one, I analysed every ship at the Battle of Vega and identified 2 capital ships which had previously not been seen in public release. I went over everything we could know about these ships at the time and made predictions.
not been seen in public release. Now, we did see those briefly in a Squadron 42 leak that came out in 2022, I think it was, fall of 2022. That was actually like a sort of internal trailer from about a year prior is what the word on the street was. And so if you want to see it, I have it saved on my computer. I'm not going to play it now. We get a few other angles of them that are kind of cool to look at, but it's more of a top down, and these are much better shots of them. Baby's more than 1 pound. Yeah, I can't lift my kids with this arm. The doing diaper changes for the twins is a challenge.
About their class designations. This year, we saw almost the entirety of this sequence play out in game, and my predictions have been proven pretty much true. In this video, I'll briefly recap the key points and show how we can tell that this is the cruiser and this is the escort carrier of the UEE Navy. My name's Jael, and if you enjoy videos about lore, languages and little details, you might like to subscribe to my channel. Quite simply, we can see the confirmation of my class designations about 8 hours and 4 minutes into the live broadcast. On the Holoviewer, we see these ships labelled. The UES Corvus is a cruiser, and the UES Argus is an escort carrier. My original identification of the UES Corvus and UES Integrity from last year was based on a Galactopedia article that referenced the Integrity as a cruiser. The cruiser was the $4.5 million stretch goal, and in that stretch goal was described as playable. This represents a wholly new class of ship that hasn't been shown in development previously. It appears to be one of these cruisers that gets destroyed by the Kingship's beam superweapon in the Battle of Vega. I proposed the escort carrier for the other ship, based mostly on its flight deck, size, and a Galactopedia article that stated that Pegasus class escort carriers are a standard component of the UEE fleet. The escort carrier was the $15 million stretch goal, but was not described as playable or flyable there.
If you look at this, and this is actually the best shot that we have for the escort carrier, you can see that it does have a pretty sizable turret on the bottom. In the other angles from the leak, where you're looking at it from the top, there didn't seem to be a large turret on the top. So it seems that it's configured similarly to the Bengal, where the large gun is on the bottom, but there isn't a large gun on the top. And it seems like this is still where the launch bay is for, for aircraft. But they do, when he talks, we went over that part with the Holoviewer where he shows them moving up in order to get a line of fire on an additional ship. It's ostensibly to be able to use these guns. So he's moving an escort carrier up in order to get additional rounds on target from more big guns.
Size, and a Galactopedia article that stated that Pegasus class escort carriers are a standard component of the UEE fleet. The escort carrier was the $15 million stretch goal, but was not described as playable or flyable there. It's not wholly confirmed that this is the replacement for the old Pegasus carrier, shown off early in development and referenced in the character art for Randall Graves, but the name Argus would fit the mythological theme of the name Pegasus, so I do think that this is a full replacement for that model as I proposed last year. That's the only part of my prediction that hasn't been wholly confirmed at this point, but it does seem pretty likely. There is a...
And obviously the cult following of the Pegasus doesn't want to believe that that's the new model of the Pegasus. I think it is. I think it fits with the contemporary RSI style guide that goes with the Bengal and the Cruiser. But until we get confirmation, we won't know. But the naming convention works. Like you said, the only thing that's different is if you look at that patch.
Wholly confirmed at this point, but it does seem pretty likely. There is a...
let's see. If you look at the patch on his jacket, the patch is still the old design. So maybe they just didn't update that. But, Pegasus, Argus, and Chimera are all references to Greek myth. So maybe they just haven't updated the patch. Maybe they're never, maybe they aren't aware that they need to update the patch in that scene or other scenes. But I think it's probably leaning that this is the Pegasus. Yeah. When Jail says little details, he does little details. Yeah, Danger Hobo. I only did LPDs and LHDs as well. Yep. Well, Odin isn't Greek myth, though. These are Greek myth.
For that model, as I proposed last year. That's the only part of my prediction that hasn't been wholly confirmed at this point, but it does seem pretty likely. There is a slight contradiction in the footage we saw. The Argus label appears to belong to the escort carrier, and it appears to be a cruiser that's destroyed. However, the voiceover says it's the Argus that's destroyed.
Argus is down. Repeat. Argus is down.
Just a little.
The only thing, like, they also could be saying that the Argus, like the escort carrier, also could be going down at the same time as that cruiser, because it got moved up in forward. So I mean, they could have lost two capital ships like at the same time. How awful would that be? But I think he's right that it's probably just a misspoke. They need to change that.
Minor detail I noticed. I will probably make some deeper dive videos into the Battle of Vega and updates to the naval uniforms in the coming days. So if that's something that interests you, please consider subscribing to my channel and checking out my videos from last year on the topic. I've been Jail, and thanks for watching.
So yeah, we're not going to watch this one. It's about 10 minutes long, and this one is just on what we saw in the I Held the Line video, and so that's why I did the short update. But no forum rage on that wrong detail. Yeah, but we get an idea of how big the cruiser and the escort carrier are relative to the Bengal. And, based off the whole idea of Star Citizen being World War II in space, we can look a little bit at what a battlecruiser is. But before we do that, I have to run to the little boys' room. I got to use the head. I'll be right back. You guys don't move a muscle. All right. Thanks for your patience, guys. Sorry. I drank a lot of water today because I've been outside in the backyard smoking some chicken breasts and grilling a bunch of vegetables and stuff because I made a big pot of curry this evening. Okay. So where were we? Oh, yes. So sorry, this is white on white. The battlecruiser. So obviously, like, this is just a Wikipedia article. But the let's just read through this. The battlecruiser was a type of capital ship in the first half of the 20th century. These were similar in displacement, armament, and cost to battleships, but differed in form and balance of attributes. Battlecruisers typically had thinner armor to a varying degree and a somewhat lighter main gun battery than contemporary battleships, installed on a longer hull with much higher engine power in order to attain greater speeds. The first battlecruisers were designed in the United Kingdom as a successor to the armored cruiser, at the same time as the Dreadnought succeeded the pre-Dreadnought battleship. The goal of the cruiser concept was to outrun any ship with similar armament and chase down any ship with lesser armament. They were intended to hunt down slower, older armored cruisers and destroy them with heavy gunfire, while avoiding combat with the more powerful but slower battleships. However, as more and more battlecruisers were built, they were increasingly used alongside the better protected battleships. Yeah, so essentially, they're meant to be, the hull is about the same size as a battleship, give or take, maybe a little bit longer, but they're meant to have more powerful engines and achieve greater speeds. They're just not as heavily armored and sometimes not as heavily armed as a battleship. And we do know from a lore maker's community questions that the UE currently doesn't have any battleship class ships in service. That was from several years ago. But given that CIG has often referenced World War II in space as being sort of the impetus for a lot of what goes into Star Citizen, we can kind of get the idea that a battlecruiser is a big ship, larger than a cruiser. And if you looked at the battlecruisers of the area and what went into went further into World War II, they were, lengthwise and tonnage, very big ships. Yeah. Good point, Jaded Cynic. If a battleship had 12 big guns, a battlecruiser would probably have 9. Yep. In order to be able to punch, not quite to that level, but to reduce the weight, the mass along with the armor, in order to be able to chase down smaller ships that they could take down with those guns. And then they went on to have battleships. Yeah. So they are good sized ships, which is why I think that these are going to be quite similar in size to the Bengal. I think that they are going to be bigger than what we just saw of the cruiser in the I Held the Line and Squadron 42 gameplay reveal. If you think about how they're going to have a bigger armament than those cruisers and would be meant to be able to go as fast, they would be, likely be bigger, heavier, heavier armor, great, equal speed, maybe maneuverability, and bigger guns. The other thing to point out is that the UE Navy, this is from Lore Builder 13, way back when from CIG. These are the original designations that they used for in the UE, and they do use cruiser, battle cruiser, escort carrier, and fleet carrier. Yeah, exactly, Jade Cynic. Yep, they wouldn't have the armor to go toe to toe with battleships, and wouldn't be able to punch as hard. Maybe same, similar caliber, but wouldn't have as many of those primary guns. So you wouldn't want them going toe to toe with battleships, but they could outrun a battleship, and essentially kite them was the idea. Kind of like what they said with the Polaris way back when, be able to outgun that which it can't outrun, but outrun that which it can't outgun. Similar kind of design. So yeah, let's get into what CIG has said about how we would be able to acquire a Bengal in game. Because if you remember, we talked about the stretch goals. The Bengal is a flyable or playable. I always forget which adjective they use, but they're interchangeable. Hey, Norse Peak 07, thanks for joining us on YouTube. But the Bengal, the cruiser, the escort carrier, and the battle cruiser are all, per the stretch goals and per what Jared said.
Part of the crew.
Hey, thanks for the follow.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
They are all required to be playable, flyable, interchangeable descriptive terms in game. So ostensibly, those cruisers, escort carriers, and again the Bengal we just saw in the I Held the Line video, as well as the gameplay reveal, those will be in game and playable, flyable for playable, flyable for players. And if the battle cruiser is, as Jared says, the last concept, then the cruiser and escort carrier that we just saw in game and engine aren't meant to be concepts. They are meant to be essentially a straight to flyable. But let's see what just to cut this. I didn't get all of them. There are multiple things. Yeah, ships of the line, my kind of talk. There are multiple statements that have been made over the years. I just grabbed a few of them regarding how the Bengal would come to be in game and why that is. So this is from Wayback Machine, but this is an the old community forums for Star Citizen. And Ben Lesnick is one of the old community managers. I don't remember his exact title. He was a part of the project for years, and then had to step away due to health issues. He's still active on social media. He's just a super fan of the Wing Commander series. He's like got encyclopedic knowledge of it. But someone asked, hi, Ben. I'm not sure if you're the right person to ask, but I have a question that's been burning a hole in my head. I am looking forward to eventually getting a Bengal carrier, but the details are a bit sketchy. I was just wondering, how do we get the Bengal carrier? It's been speculated that the only way to get it is to go rogue, become a pirate, and steal one. That is not a good system for people on the right side of the law. Will there be the option to spend, say, 400 million credits or build one if you're in a fleet? He has a Wing Commander website that's active. Recently was on one of my dad's ships, the BB-61 Iowa. Oh, cool. Where do they have that one for touring? Where is that stationed at? Sorry, just looking at something real quick. Yeah, only 400 million UEC. Give me 2. Yeah, exactly. So Ben says you'll never be able to build one for the same reason you can't build a nuclear supercarrier today. Even if you had the money, the government wouldn't let you. And this has been a theme with the UEE for a very long time. As Paul Astropope would say, they are not the UEE is not the good guys. They're not necessarily the bad guys, but they're definitely not the good guys. And even though we've gotten rid of the Mezzers, there's a lot of essentially like not Mezzer holdovers, but there's a lot of the UEE that's still left over, that's still intact from that era. The UEE is not some benevolent, super trusting government that would be like, oh yeah, sure, you seem like a good guy. Yeah, you guys can totally build, we'll totally give you the designs for our largest capital ships at a time when we're embroiled in a fight for survival with the Van Duel. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, we'll give you the latest and greatest, even though we only sell demilitarized versions of our javelins and Idrises that are hundreds of designs that are hundreds of years old. Come on, guys. You don't have to be outside the law to get the stock Bengals, though. The idea is that we've seeded a couple of them out there in the universe, rendered derelict by a Van Duel or other attack. Players can go out there, find them, and fix them up. It's basically a conceit to get around the idea that the UE would never actually let someone have such a ship. I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Yeah, well, in CEOs and people from different planetary governments, people from within the Senate and the stuff. The parties that were active during that period are still active today. The Mezzer dictators are gone, but the tiger hasn't entirely changed its stripes. Better, but not great. There's still a lot of room for improvement in the UE, but that's why If you want Paul to go off, go hang out in Paul's chat, Astrobub, Astro Historian, and ask him to describe the UEE. Ask him if the UEE are the good guys. Ask him if, if you're a UEE civilian, if we live in a dystopia or not. And you'll get the answer that, yeah, it's kind of a silly idea that we'd be able to buy them, let alone build them. And then people will say, well, they said we'd be able to build Bengals. And they didn't say that. The 1.0 presentation did not say you'd be able to build a Bengal. They showed a Bengal for scale and said you'd be able to build your own capital ships. That's it. Take CIG at their word. Not what you think they said, what they actually said. Because if you go up to Jared and say, you said we'd be able to build our own Bengals, he'd be like, we didn't say that. We said you'd be able to build our own capital ships. That's what was said. Go watch the video. We just use the Bengal for scale. Yeah, read the fucking fine print, folks. If you don't want to be disappointed, understand the context and understand what was actually said verbatim. The truth will set you free. Do I think we'll be able to build our own Idrises? Yes. Do I think we'll be able to build our own Javelins? I wouldn't be surprised. Do I think we'll be able to build our own Polarises and other ships like that? For sure. Do I think we'll be able to build our own cruisers and escort carriers and battle cruisers, these latest generation ships? No, not at all. Hey, Paul, are the UE the good guys flying your favorite ship, the Redeemer? Yeah. Oh, geez. Oh, man. Yeah, you want to get him red as a tomato? That'd do it. And if you haven't watched it, Paul, I think it's only to members right now, but on Space Tomatoes channel, I don't remember, it's I think it's Space Tomato 2. Yeah. He just had Paul on his podcast yesterday. So it should be going up for everybody here soon. So check that out. Obviously, always a good listen to or good watch to hear them talk. Yeah, the UE doesn't want them used against them. It would be like training soldiers of another country that comes back later using that training against you. You can disagree all you want. I'm just saying this is what was said. This is what was said. That's what was said. Good old Wingman's Hangar from April 30th, 2014. And again, these aren't the only times these sorts of things were said. I can find multiple versions. I'm just not going to bore you with repeating it over and over again. But let's see what they say here.
From Knight's Landing, is there really any chance that a player is capable of finding one Bengal carrier? How would the UEE react when they notice one of their ships being manned by unauthorized operators? And if you're not in too much trouble, could you be hired by the UEE if you and your crew are proven elite carrier operators?
That's a lot of questions.
It is.
So let's answer the primary one first, which is that it's not like you go, around the corner and they're parked right behind the fence.
Where do they keep the nuclear vessels?
So it's probably going to be, we're talking down in the fringes somewhere. Maybe out in Vandal space, a carrier that lost a battle. That's a little banged up. We'll call it a fixer-upper.
Fixer-upper, okay.
And so if you want to refit it and get it back into working shape, and that's going to take some effort and some defending it, then, yeah, you could fly it around. But it's not like you can bring it back and park it in the front yard and say, hey, look, we want to be your buddies. It's not going to happen.
All right. From Gorlock.
It's not going to happen. And this isn't the only time they've said this. Now, obviously, they haven't talked about it recently, but they reiterated these same statements. It was like a theme across the company. Multiple devs from different disciplines are like, no, that's silly. Yeah, you could find one derelict and bring it back into service, fix it up, and you could fly it, but you're not going to be able to go parade it past the UEE in their space and and not not get shot at. That's the idea. And then here, let's listen to this one. This is 10 for the Designers, episode 5 from 2015.
Anyway, doesn't matter. It had been mentioned that Bengal carriers are available to civilians only for taking by force or as Rex for fixing up. Would the Crucible-based external repair structure be typically used in that process? to the point where it can move itself to a place more suitable for an overhaul than the presumably dangerous place it was found in.
So, a crucible, not by itself. I mean, Bengals are giant ships, so that's going to be something where you and a few friends in multiple crucibles are going to want to sort of roll over to that thing and start getting it fixed up, because if you've managed to make one of those things dead in the water, that's no small amount of damage that you're going to have to fix up on this thing.
Yeah, the Crucible will be able to perform repair actions on things like the Bengal. They'll be able to repair hull damage, fix up breaches, do component repair in the field to a much greater degree than you could do by hand. However, the Crucible is limited in its cargo space. And there are some components on the Bengal which are larger than the Crucible can carry. So if one of those is broken beyond repair and must be replaced, then you're going to have to find a way around that. It won't be a single Crucible job. I don't see that being the case.
Okay. So obviously they talked about this same concept again. It's a gameplay idea. But it's something that's being reiterated multiple times by multiple devs that like this was the idea that they had for how players would be able to get the playable, flyable Bengal in the verse. But that you wouldn't be able to just buy one from the UEE, and you wouldn't be able to just build one either. The Puppet, they didn't say that you couldn't, but they didn't say you could. They just said build capital ships, and they showed I think they just used the Bengal for scale to show you how big the station is. And we're going to talk about my insane theory for that ties all this together once we get to the very end. I'm coming to a point. We're just taking a long way to get there, so we can get a lot of really good context. But again, like I just said, there's probably like 5 or 6 more different references to, you wouldn't be able to just buy a Bengal or build a Bengal. The UEE wouldn't let you just keep it if you brought it back into UEE space. They talk about it multiple times throughout the development. Like, this is something that CR talked about, where, that you'd be able to find it derelict in space and put it back into service. Norspig says, I can speak to the legality of building and operating your own supercarrier in real life. I was in Washington on a trip when a reporter asked a senator a question on the stairs of the Capitol building. Did they ask if you could? Yeah. It's a silly notion. And then people are like, oh, well, it's a game. And it's like, okay, but believability. Why does that matter? Because it matters to CIG. They've said it hundreds of times. Like it's a constant theme throughout development. And so going back to selling the Battlecruiser. So Jared has, we've basically come to the conclusion, I think it's a pretty solid conclusion, that the concept for the Battlecruiser is going to be coming at Invictus launch week. It's a pretty, it's looking like a pretty strong likelihood. And, I'm against selling it. I think CIG does need to take their reputation among the wider gaming community seriously, especially going into, a lot of people are assuming that we are going to get an announcement. I think we're going to get an announcement regarding Squadron 42 in the not too distant future, whether it's at Level Up, whether it's at, which is next week, by the way, whether it's at Invictus Launch Week, which I think would tie in really well with showing us the concept of what the Battlecruiser would be, and more. But I think it would be absolutely shooting yourself in the foot to, hey, right when we're about to start, potentially marketing Squadron 42, or not far away from marketing Squadron 42. And and marketing that, wanting to do well, and then wanting that to funnel more players into Star Citizen, I think it's a pretty terrible idea to sell a JPEG, because again, it's a concept. Like, not even in production yet. We know the Javelin is practically done, or largely done. We just know we're not going to get it until after Squadron per John Crew. But to go from selling a Javelin for $3,000 or whatever it is, that we've already seen the interior of, we've seen it flying around in the PU, to selling a concept JPEG of something far larger than a Javelin for ostensibly more than a Javelin, that we don't know when it's going to be coming. Whereas the Javelin, we've been told it's coming after Squadron 42, and we know Squadron 42 is coming this year, ostensibly. I think that is a fucking terrible idea for CIG's image in regards to the wider gaming community. Like, if you want to restart all the pitchforking regarding pay to win and scam and corporate greed and all that, that's the way you fucking do it. Is you sell a concept of a ship bigger than anything you've ever sold, more powerful than than anything you've ever sold, which, like we've talked about, that would be in lore a brand new design, a brand new anvil design of a ship that's far larger and more powerful than the Idris and the Javelin, which are designs that are hundreds of years old and sold as demilitarized. It makes zero sense. None. Yeah. Eric Wollaston, we are getting to the funding part. That's what these tabs are about. Because we do know lots about the funding. We know all about the funding. We know plenty about the funding. And that's why, again, it's shooting yourself in the foot to sell the Battlecruiser. It's not shooting yourself in the foot to use the release of the Battlecruiser and others' concept and the gameplay that goes with getting them in order to sell the game. That's a different thing entirely. Kind of like the 1.0 presentation where they showed us, hey, we're going to have base building, and with base building, we're going to be able to build space stations and such, and everything that comes with. They didn't monetize the space stations. They didn't sell the space stations. They didn't sell the bases. It's the gameplay that sells. That's why CIG has been making so much more money this year and last year, is because of gameplay and making the game, not just selling JPEGs. Oh, I don't think they're desensitized to that at all, Sandy Sanderson. Not in the slightest. They pulled goddamn flight blades from the store. Flight blades. A microtransaction. They pulled those from the store because we made us think about it. And you think that they are desensitized to the way the wider gaming community feels about them at a time when they're about to start marketing Squadron 42? You think that CIG is that out of touch? Like, I mean, it's possible. I just don't think they're that fucking stupid. I think if you really want to put a rein on the parade of marketing Squadron 42, you sell the Battlecruiser for $5,000, $6,000, $10,000. It is because of the uproar. It was in Xylo's post. They said, hey, we miscalculated. We made a goof. That's why they pulled them. That's why they stopped selling them. It's that was the reason, is because there was a lot of community backlash about selling that, but if we look at the funding, there's no reason to sell it. There's no reason to take the risk of selling that, because the other thing is, if you think about it, they sell dozens of Javelins a year. Dozens. Not hundreds, dozens. Hundreds of Idrises a year, and dozens of Javelins, per the last estimates. Because they scale how many they sell and how many waves and everything based off how many people are in the game in order to keep that. Okay, Cindy Sanderson, though, that's conspiracy theory thinking. Obviously, I don't engage in conspiracy theory thinking. I take things that CIG says at face value, and I take them at what they said verbatim. Yeah, some things don't sell well when they don't pull them from the shop. They're still on the shop. But, and maybe they didn't sell well and they got a bunch of backlash, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Battlecruiser is, if they did sell if it was between $4,000 and $10,000. And some people have suggested, well, they could just sell the blueprint. That's worse. That's worse. Now, selling a blueprint, which, maybe they sell it for hundreds, maybe they sell it for thousands, who knows? But you are selling not even a JPEG of a ship, you're selling a JPEG of a blueprint that you wouldn't be able to build until you somehow build a space station that big and everything that goes with it. Think about how unattainable the goal of having your own space station is for the vast majority of players. But you sell the blueprint. Yeah. But the Eve, like anybody, it's it's different, for Eve, that's the absolute ludicrousness of selling the Battlecruiser, both in terms of the timing of how big it is relative to the other capital ships that they do sell, and what they've said regarding how we'd be able to obtain a Javelin in game, what they said, a Bengal in game, what they've said about how the UE would feel about us having a Bengal, which is a similar ship in terms of size and scope based off of what we know regarding the cruiser, escort carrier, and what battle cruisers are. Yeah, I agree. Blueprints should never be for sale in the pledge store. Absolutely not. I think I don't think they'll ever stop selling ships. I think that they will shift. I think their goal is to shift how much of the funding comes from selling ships to selling microtransactions, things for cosmetics. Fashion citizen, and not just fashion citizen, but interior decorator citizen. That's the true monetization of Star Citizen. No other game will have the opportunity for ownership that we will have in Star Citizen, from, fashion citizen for your character, decorating your ship, decorating your hangar, decorating your hab, your apartment, your base, your space station, anything else they come up with, all of that. That is how you monetize Star Citizen and make far more money than you do selling ships. That's how you make way more money in other MMOs. But let's look at the funding. Let's look at how ridiculous the idea of, well, they need to sell the Battlecruiser. They need to sell a few dozen Battlecruisers at $6,000, $10,000 a pop to make a few $100,000. Or maybe up to $1 million on just selling the Battlecruisers. Let's look at how ridiculous the notion is that CIG needs to do that. So, in 2023, let's see, 222. So this is the last financial report we have from CIG on their website, but we do have 2024's financials due to the audit that went down in the UK. So in 2023, their total, we'll scroll up here to income. In 2023, their total income from subscriptions, other income, which includes tax incentives, which is a big reason why they've restructured and sent so much development to the UK and Germany and everything. Selling ships is what CIG does to fund the game. But selling ships like we have before and selling the Battlecruiser are entirely different things. It is not remotely comparable. That's why we went through all these other tabs beforehand. Selling the Battlecruiser isn't like selling a Javelin. Selling the Battlecruiser isn't like selling an Idris. It's not the same. It has worse ramifications because of how expensive it would be. It has worse ramifications in terms of pay to win because of how big and powerful it would be. It has worse ramifications due to when they would start selling it around the marketing for Squadron 42. and if they kept a similar, some sort of similar ratio for how many they would sell to how they do the Idrises and Javelins, they wouldn't sell a whole lot of them, which means they wouldn't make that much money. And right now, CIG is making a fuck ton of money, tons of money. And it's not by selling more bigger ships. It's by building the game and having more people playing the game. Yeah, they make way more money. And that's how this is. Sandy Sanders, you make a good point. This is consumer economics and consumer psychology 101. You make more money selling more things to more people cheaply than selling expensive things to fewer people. That's why, like, the price of big screen TVs and everything has gone down. The cost of consumer electronics relative to to income and adjusted for inflation has gone down so much. Why everybody has them, because you make more money selling those things to more people than having them be a niche thing. CIG makes way more money over the year selling smaller ships than they do on the big ships to whales. Yeah, the better the game is, the more money they make, and they've proven that over the last several years, but especially over the last year plus. But so this is 2023. 2023, obviously, the sales pledges was 119 million. But then they also had 17 million in other income and 6.5 million in sub money, for a total of 142 million dollars in total income in 2023. But in 2023, their total trading cost was also 163 million, so they're 20 million in the red. But part of what they spent was previous year's profits that they had accrued, as well as part of the trading costs is the cost for CitizenCon and the significant increase in the publishing costs, which is publishing a platform, which is how much it costs CIG in server operations to host the game. So they say in this report, a big reason that this number went up was a 33%, I think, increase in the marketing, CitizenCon, which is a big part of it, 2023, the first one we had in person in years, as well as their platform costs. They had a huge jump in 2023 in new players, a big, massive jump. We'll look at that in the CCU game thing here in a second. And that increase in the number of players means your platform costs, the cost to host the game on AWS and so on, go up hand in hand. And until we get dynamic server meshing, those costs will continue to go up, correlating with the number of new players. Yes, Eric Williston, they do get a tax credit. That is attributed right here in other income incentives. So the tax incentives is up here. That's why they've been growing the Manchester studio. Why the Manchester studio is the bulk of the company, because they get massive tax credits for it. And that you can see that in this financial report as well. But so they ran into the red in 2023, but it was an investment in terms of the marketing of CitizenCon, as well as the correlation in the increase. Look at the increase in their publishing and marketing right here. It went up $10 million. And then other dev costs. Part of this is one-time charges because of the acquisition of Turbulent right here. And so in 2024, we can't get the exact amount of how much their total operating cost was in 2024. But we do know that in 2024, they went through the big restructuring. You can see in their report here, this is from the audit, that their costs in terms of wages went down as part of the restructuring, that they got more in terms of the tax incentives in 2024 than they did in 2023. And the total headcount actually went down across the company, but it went up in Manchester, which meant bigger tax incentives. And so in 2024 compared to 2023, they actually ran a significant profit. And we don't know the exact amount in dollars, and we can't necessarily attribute how much this is because we also have to take into account the non UK studios and stuff. But they had a profit of several $1 million American, upwards of nearly $10 million American in 2024. And the studio has grown a little bit since then. The CIG has grown a little bit since then. Long-term owning Turbulent is great for them. Because instead of paying for them via contracted dev costs, having them in-house is much more cost-effective. It allowed them to restructure, move some development and platform stuff to Turbulent, which is more cost-effective to have that in Montreal than it is to have it in Austin. But they instead of going into the red, now they did go into the red. Right here, they did go into the red in 2023, but they were significantly in the black in 2020, in 2021, in 2022. And so they spent some of that money that was in the black, as well as some of their investment, which is earmarked for platform costs and marketing, which is the cost of hosting the game and things like CitizenCon. That's what that money is for, along with the marketing campaign for Squadron 42. But they still had all this money on hand in 2023. They added to this pretty significantly in 2024, that we can see in this report. But then let's look at, we're going to refresh this. Let's look at the CCU game funding dashboard for 2025 and then see where we are for 2026. So this is where we were in 2024. They made just a hair less in income in pledges than in 2023, but they actually had more in tax incentives, and their operating costs went down pretty significantly in 2024, which is why they went from being in the red to being back in the black. But then let's look at 2025, and this is just pledges. Yeah, the reason they got their own mocap studio is it saves them a lot of money, and it's also a source of revenue. When they're not using it, they rent it out. In 2025, in just pledges, this isn't including so in 2023 they had 119 million in pledges, but then they had an additional 23 million in other income. And so even if we know it's more than that for subs, and we know that it's more than that for the other incentives in 2024. So let's say it was 23, let's say just conservatively, it was 25 million in other income in 2024. And so that puts them over $140 million in total revenue in 2024, and they had a profit of several million, nearly $10 million. But then you get 155 million in 2025 because the game is in such a better state. Not from selling more big ships to whales, selling more smaller ships to more people. 155 million. Let's say they get another, let's say conservatively 20, just 20 million in incentives and sub money. 20 to 25 million. We're looking at total income of 175 to 180 million dollars. Over previously in 2023, their total was 140. We're looking at $40 million more income with less operating costs. If they had a profit at a similar level of income to 2023 in 2024, but only slightly grew the studio, you're looking at a profit in the tens of millions of dollars. Tens of millions of dollars last year. Not single-digit millions, tens of millions, because they only grew the company by a little bit. They made multiple references that, the studio is about 1,000 some odd people. So if they made a profit of 30 plus million, maybe even 40 plus million dollars last year, and they are on track to beat last year already this year, we're well ahead. This is April, and we're at the 18th of April. This is April last year, and then this is Invictus launch. This is May Invictus launch week. the idea that we, will grossly exceed last year, not even counting Squadron 42 sales, is just insane. Like absolute absurd amounts of money. And you know that a bunch of this money that they had here went right back into replacing that investment money that was spent in order to increase their marketing budget for Squadron 42, etc. So CIG is not hurting for money in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. PUBG Mobile making billions is insane. Yeah. Well, and look at things like Fortnite and all that sort of stuff. And all that stuff is just fucking cosmetics. Like that's where the real money's at. That's why CIG needs to finish the game, is so they can start making real money on microtransactions, not this much on macrotransactions. But that's just insane. And so the idea that, well, they need to sell the Battlecruiser in order to fund the game, in order to fund Squadron 42, is an absolute farce. They don't. And it would, especially if you subscribe to the idea like I do, that it would hurt their marketing campaign for Squadron 42, which they want to do well, because they do. Like, the premise absolutely falls apart completely. If you follow Space Tomato, and if you don't, shame on you already. But no, it doesn't separate it via game packages versus other pledges. It just gets all lumped together. Yeah. The only way they separate it here is sales, pledges, and counter. Does anyone have an idea what counter means? But then sub money is right here, which is pretty crazy. They make millions of dollars in sub money, and it goes up every year. We don't even know what that number is, 2 years, 3 years later, but it went up hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. It went up 1.2 million between 2022 and 2023, which is nuts. But yeah, the idea that they need to sell the Battlecruiser in order to fund the game is just crazy. I'm not going to link it right now, but I'll put in the show notes. But Space Tomato did a podcast with a guy who works in finance and investing. And then he did a follow-up video breaking that down, because people have been concerned after reading this that CIG, that the investors are going to pull their money. Yeah, Citizen Skylark. Thank you so much, Lee Prisoner. Yeah, Jade Cynic, that's a great point. Yep, absolutely. But in this, it does say that the investors do have a window that started this year and goes to the end of September where they could pull out some of their money. But the reality and what's in this document, if you read it, is the investors could only pull out what CIG would make in a profit over the year if they pulled it out. And so they wouldn't be able to pull that money out. If they did, they would only be able to take from profit last year. So yeah, some games spend close to that same making game. So the investors could right now take some money out, withdraw some of their investment out of CIG. But to do that before the launch of Squadron 42 and after CIG had their biggest year by a landslide ever, and they're on track to beat that year, would be financial suicide. Like their shares are growing in value every year. They grew a ton last year. They're going to grow more this year, especially if this is where we're at, not even including Squadron 42. Yeah, they can't pull out their entire investment. They can withdraw a portion of their investment at the current valuation. Which is pretty significant, because when they made their valuation, their initial investment and their second investment in 2018 and 2020, the company CIG was valued at about $500 million, and they were only making 37 million in pledges. I think their actual revenues were close to about 50 million. CIG isn't on the stock market. Nope. They're not publicly traded. They're private. Essentially, they have private ownership where they own shares. The private investors are headed by the Calder family, but it's actually a conglomerate. There are several other groups that represent other investors, but the Calders are the lion's share. But then Chris Roberts is the largest shareholder, and that's why he has the controlling interest of the company. Aaron Roberts has a significant amount of shares. Benoit, and I forget who the CEO over at Turbulent was when they CIG didn't buy Turbulent. They did a stock exchange, and so Benoit and the other founder of Turbulent got I forget how much of a stake in CIG in exchange for CIG getting a 100% stake in Turbulent, and that's how they merged them. Yeah. So obviously, like, the valuation of CIG has gone up because they substantially since 2018, since 2020, just based off of how much they make in revenue, but not including their assets, which is Star Engine, the Star Citizen IP, Squadron 42, all that. So like if they did pull out their share, the percentage of their shares that they're allowed to pull out. Oh, thanks so much for the follow.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
Yeah, Luiso Pereira. Yep, yeah, it would be, unless you needed the money for something else ostensibly more important. Like, because, I mean, if they did pull out right now, they're obviously going to make a lot of money on their initial investment. But if they pull out right now, they're going to miss out on what comes next. If CIG, even if they make this much money this year, it's based off of an average of the last 3 years. So if they had, if they pulled it out this year, it would be based off the average of 2023, 2024, and 2023. But then if CIG makes this much money this year in just without Squadron 42, that average goes up substantially. And then if we add in Squadron 42 sales, like, it goes up a lot. And so it would make no financial sense to pull out now. So yeah, the CIG doesn't need to sell the Battlecruiser to fund the development at all. But I am of the opinion, and it is strictly my opinion, that the hype of actually we'll just get right into it. And I grabbed a few links, and obviously, like, you could find a bunch of hit pieces in no time flat for Star Citizen. Everybody knows Kotaku loves to slam Star Citizen. This is from Unilad Tech, but this is only May of last year, where they wrote this article, with a whole bunch of Reddit comments and stuff about Star Citizen being a scam, blah, blah, blah. Kotaku does... that is a horribly optimized website. Kotaku does their hit pieces... Oops, didn't mean to do that. Kotaku does their hit pieces on a regular basis. Star Citizen's Everything Pack costs $48,000. Star Citizen has had a week to forget. Star Citizen's now raised over $500 million. There's another one. The wider gaming community loves to hate on Star Citizen and CIG. And I know a lot of us within the community have become numb to it, but the wider gaming community has not at all. And more people get brought over every year. But if you want to really successfully market Squadron 42, you don't sell a many thousands of dollar JPEG, who knows when it's ever going to be in game, at the same time that you're trying to market your single player game that's been in development for like 14 years, essentially. You don't bring a lot more people into Star Citizen and buy starter packages and everything and make far more money doing that by by marketing what people call a pay to win of selling this giant JPEG, a freaking new age, not old Idris or Javelin, but new age cruiser. Let's look at we can look at citizen increase. So the biggest citizen increase was in 2022. We set big numbers in number of citizens during the pandemic. And then it tapered off a little bit into 2023, 2024, but then it jumped back up in 2025. Huge increase. Over 700,000, increase, nearly 250,000 increase. And look at where we are in terms of new citizens over 2025, over 2024, over 2023. We are on track to have more new citizens than the record year of 2022. And it is not due to selling, pay to win, and I say that with the utmost jest because we know it's not pay to win, but the outside gaming community doesn't understand that. You don't make more money for CIG. You don't bring more people into the game, which makes more money for CIG, by selling, massive capital ships. You do it by making the game, by completing Squadron 42, by showing progress, by releasing features, by making the game more stable. And this is the result. We have, had a huge increase in new players last year. We're on track to beat the biggest year ever already this year by a fair margin. And we're definitely beating the last several years. We're on track to our pledges, just that one source of income is already on track to beat last year by a lot. And that's not even including Squadron 42. So what would be the upside of selling the Battlecruiser? There isn't. Luiso Pereira says, the problem, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is that they have to sustain a big, solid, heavy structure. So how to keep the development in the path they are on now? We have seen more delivery in the last 8 months than 2024, for example. No worries. It's yeah, I'm a big stats guy. It's a big part of my formal education, a big part of my professional background in terms of clinical research. Luiso Pereira. It is so, and that's one reason why 2024 returned to profitability is they did restructure quite a bit. There were some layoffs. They laid off people in the U.S. I'm not buying the Battlecruiser now. They laid off people in the U.S. They hired additional people in Montreal and Frankfurt in the UK, where it's more cost effective for them to do so. We didn't have another in-person CitizenCon. We don't know how much the platform costs are right now. It obviously, based off the number of new citizens, it continues to go up because hosting the game for more people makes that number go up. But we have static server meshing coming in. The goal is for dynamic server meshing to come in, and that is when the relationship of additional players to increase platform costs will change, in that more and more players will be able to come in. We'll have larger shards without a commensurate, the same relationship in the increase in platform costs that they've been experiencing year over year. Because of far more efficient use of server resources. That's one of the big reasons. That is one of the biggest reasons, pardon me, along with the very large scale of dynamic server meshing, is to have the most efficient use of server resources, which are costly, for CIG, because that's a huge line item. Absolutely. And like we just looked at citizens, if that line item, went up 10 million from 2022, and that line item, it was platform and marketing. So part of that 10 million increase is CitizenCon. Part of that is increased platform costs due to adding, 2/3 additional citizens in 2023. And then we added nearly 500,000 citizens in 2024, but we didn't have a CitizenCon. So that platform costs, probably went up an additional several $1 million. But then we added 700,000 last year, and we're really hitting big numbers this year. And so that's why it's important for them to get dynamic server meshing out so they can start being more efficient in terms of the relationship of players to server costs. But Eric Wollaston, they don't need to sell it. They don't need to sell it. They just need to make it, they just need to tell us how it will become flyable. That's all they need to do. Because that's all that it says in the stretch goals. Flyable, playable for the Battlecruiser, the Cruiser, the Escort Carrier, and the Bengal. That's why they had the idea that you wouldn't be able to buy a Bengal. You wouldn't be able to build a Bengal. You'd be able to find it out in the verse. And I think that they're going to, my tinfoil hat theory is that and we're going to wrap this up with my tinfoil hat theory. This is my tinfoil hat theory, and this is also what I'd like to see. And I'll explain why. My tinfoil hat theory is that they are going to revive the idea of finding these, what I call super capitals, the Escort Carrier, the Cruiser, the Battlecruiser, and the Bengal. They're going to revive the idea of finding these derelict out in space. And at Invictus Launch Week, they will prepare a demo of what that looks like, just like they did for the base building, space station building demo. Because I think that they're going to tie those together. I think that's what they would tie those together. Hey, no worries, Eric Wilson, totally okay. Obviously, the VOD will be on Twitch. You're on YouTube. You can rewatch it on YouTube, but I will also re-upload it a little bit edited on YouTube. And when I do that, the description for the YouTube will have a link to the Google Doc for the show notes. And all of these links will be there. And for the videos, they will be links with the appropriate timestamps. So, whatever you missed, you can go back and review for yourself. If you want to share it with your friends, by all means. If you want to talk more about it, hop in the Discord. My Discord invite should be linked on the YouTube. It should still work. Oh yeah, Luis Pereira, they're always going to depend on funding. They're going to have to continue to sell ships, but they're also going to. I did a big podcast segment on this several years ago, writing a book here. But I think the continuing funding model, the ongoing funding model for CIG is not only making the additional episodes of Squadron 42. It's not only selling, continuing to sell ships, but probably at a slower pace eventually over time. Northern Trooper, I'm sorry, I need to put that in there. Is that a greater emphasis on microtransactions as the gameplay comes in that supports them. And that's why I think that we're going to see far more microtransactions for aesthetics, for not only our characters, but for our ships, for our hangars, for our habs, for our apartments, for our bases, for our space stations. And that's how they will monetize the gameplay of those things versus just buying ships. Obviously, they'll still keep selling ships, but I think that the sale of ships, within that pledge bubble will shrink as more and more sales of the microtransactions, less macro transactions, hundreds of dollars on ships, and more microtransactions, $1, $5, $10, $25 on paints, skins, furnitures, the things you could buy for Dune, to customize the look of your base. I think Squadron is going to do well. I think episode 2 and 3 are going to do better. I think Squadron will sell in terms of total copies, which is to include the people that have already bought it, which is probably 1 to 2 million. I think Squadron will probably be equally successful to Starfield in terms. Starfield sold like they're estimating like 3 to 5 million copies. But if they sell 3 to 5 million, an additional, 2 to 3 million copies this year, or over the first year of sales, at $60 a pop, that's 120 to 180 million dollars without publishing costs. That would nearly double their, and I feel like I'm being conservative. I don't know. You guys tell me what you guys, but I think a 2 to 3 million additional copies sold in the first year is probably a reasonable estimate, and that would literally double CIG's already record revenue. That will pay for, if the investors then want to withdraw their money, they can withdraw it, and CIG will still have a fuck ton of money left over. But that's what will help fund the development of episode 2 and episode 3. And I think those will be kind of like how Mass Effect was. Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 both sold more with each episode because the following for the game grew, and the game itself got better and better. The they're going to spend a lot of money on marketing, but they also have like $50+ million from that original investment, if not have fully recouped that original investment that was earmarked for marketing. That's what that was for. Yeah. Oh, it would do. Yeah, they could all pull out at once, and then some. But the other thing is, if they don't pull out at this current window, they can't pull out again until 2029 is the next window when they can start pulling out their investments. Now, what they can do, and they have been deferring, is they have not been taking their dividend payments. And that's what we don't know, is if they have started, or when they're going to start taking dividend payments on CIG's profits. Because they stopped doing that in like 2020, I think it was. They only took dividends for like a year or two. But so going back to what I think, my tinfoil hat theory of what they'll do with the Battlecruiser. I think the Battlecruiser will come out as a concept at Invictus launch week. And I think they'll have a concept comm link telling us all about it with some really cool images, maybe even some like white box video. Think about how they marketed the Ironclad, with the sort of moving images and the sounds and stuff. It was really cool, and everybody's super hyped for the Ironclad, like myself included. Oh yeah, no, Luiso, I'm a veteran original backer since 2013. And the amount of time, the amount of entertainment I've gotten from not only playing the game, which is, I have more hours playing Star Citizen than I do any other game. But the amount of time that I've spent just following the project because I find it entertaining, I have absolutely gotten more bang for my buck than any other hobby I could ever have, by far. And I play a lot of games. I've gotten more bang for my buck than the majority of games that I have bought ever, even with buying games, at much cheaper prices. I don't know of a way to track SC hours, especially that wouldn't go all the way back to when the first Hangar module came out. But I've also got a lot of money in the project because I've been, my spending has tailed off a lot in the last several years because I've got a family and kids now, and I've got a lot of ships. But I've been a $20 whatever it is subscriber since the subscriber program started. It's worth it to me. I love following the project. I love playing the game. I play it every week, still, even as a full-time dad, even when I was still working full-time and a full-time dad. That's a lot of AFK. Wow. But yeah, so I think that we will get the comm link and, sort of like a behind the ships type thing for the Battlecruiser. but I think that they will release that concept while also telling us how they intend for us to get the battlecruiser, the cruiser, the escort carrier, and the Bengal in game. I think they're going to revive the idea of finding them derelict. I think that they could do a really cool mock-up, given that the Bengal, the cruiser, and the escort carrier are already in engine, essentially in game. They could do a really cool mock-up of finding one of those derelict out in space, and repairing it in order to get it just flight worthy enough to then bring back to your space station to bring back into service. I think that's how they tie it together. I think that's how they take that space station gameplay and you could build an Idris. You can earn the blueprint for an Idris because they're for sale on the civilian market. But you could also build this space station to then support your operations to go find these derelict super capitals and then, do the basic field repairs to then limp them back to your space station and then repair them. Because they talk about how you won't be able to repair your capital ships unless you go to a capital space dock. Well, obviously, we won't be able to fully repair these super capital ships, like they talked about the Bengal, out in the field with a crucible. That ship has sailed. Yeah, I hope I'm right. But again, this is just theory crafting. This is, again, just me tinfoil hatting based off of what we've talked about already. But if you remember, if you go back to watching that 1.0, the space station, video and how much hype that got in your chest and what that made you feel, imagine what that would do for Invictus Launch Week funding. Imagine what that would do for funding for the rest of the year. Look at what that has done along with building the game over the last year and a half. Well, look at what that's done for the new players and sales and funding for CIG. Look at what that would do in terms of bringing eyes to Squadron 42's marketing campaign and getting people to buy Squadron 42. Think about that as the ultimate gameplay goal. Like, we thought that building your own space station was the ultimate gameplay goal, but what if it gets bigger than that? And not only do you build your own space station, but you build your own space station to provide support for your org, to then take it to the next level. And then you bring one of those super capital ships back, and that's the cornerstone of your fleet. Maybe you don't get a Bengal, but maybe you get a fucking escort carrier. That thing's fucking huge. It's way bigger than a Javelin. Think of how many fighters and bombers you can launch from an escort carrier. You guys saw the guns on the bottom of that thing. Think about what your org could do if you could recover one of those things, repair it at your space station, and then support it via your space station. You take it out into battle in order to do whatever, to support your operations, to get the shield tech for a planet that you have a base on, to get the really high value resources, and you're able to field that along with your Idrises and your Javelins that you guys can build. And then after they get damaged, then you limp them back to your space station, and you get the resources to then repair them and put them back into service. Like, that's the fucking dream. The dream isn't to buy the battlecruiser. The dream is to be able to go out into Vanduul space and risk it all to playing cat and mouse with Vanduul patrols to provide protect your repair fleet, to get it back into service, or get it flying enough to just limp it back to your space station in the null system that's outside of the reach of the UEE. And then you undertake the task and the logistical challenge, and the gameplay, the repair and industrial gameplay of how the fuck do we fix this thing? It's full of holes. It just barely made it through the jump tunnel. It almost exploded going through quantum, but now we got to fix it up. That's the dream. That's how you build hype. That's how you sell a lot of freaking pledges. That's how you sell a lot of copies of Squadron 42. That's how you absolutely blow these pledge, these citizen numbers out of the fucking water. Because with Squadron 42 coming this year and dynamic server meshing, and us taking on a Vandal, it was a destroyer, right? That's what they said about the ship in at the end of the tactical strike groups. You know, what happens in tactical strike groups when, you know, what's the next level of tactical strike groups? How much, we're going to go, casually do the tactical strike groups because we're going to bring our Battlecruiser and it'll be a cakewalk. But we want to get, this or that. Like, holy fuck. Or what's the next level of tactical strike group? What sort of gameplay can CIG build onto what we just talked about of being able to recover these super capitals and then use the org infrastructure you've built to then put them back into service? Where do they take things like tactical strike groups and build upon it from there in the wider universe of Star Citizen as they continue to build the game, where they build opportunities to use these things? And it's like, yeah, your org could field a whole bunch of Idrises and everything, and they're going to get their asses kicked. But what if you bring some Idrises and Javelins escorting a cruiser, a battle cruiser, a Bengal maybe? That's the dream. That's what sells Star Citizen. Even if you don't ever get anywhere close to being able to participate in that kind of gameplay, just knowing that it is there, that it's real, that's what CIG needs to do. And maybe they're what I think would be fucking morons and they sell it, or maybe they're really stupid and they sell it as a blueprint. But I see the potential for how all of us and countless other gamers our minds would absolutely be blown if that's what they were building towards. If they build beyond bases and space stations, into this next level, because that's what they've been doing. They've just been building and building and building, and it just keeps on going. And people call it scope creep, and I say it's great fucking game design. But yeah, you can't see my tinfoil hat, but it's on there. That's what I think. That's what I'd like to see. That's what I hope CIG will do, or something along those lines. In my heart of hearts, I feel like it's more the right thing to do, both for CIG, but also in terms of building goodwill to not only us backers, but also the wider gaming community, to work on developing gameplay and market the gameplay, not just the ships. And I think it's working, and I think that they can take it. I think CIG has the ability to take it to the next level, but we will see in a month. So that's all I have for this evening. We've got nearly 50 people between YouTube and Twitch. Hold on, let me look at this real quick, because this is. I just want to say how much I appreciate you guys, because this is having this many people watching live without having been rated is a record for me. I have never had this many people. 4.8 next month. I've never had this many people watching live.
Part of the crew.
Hey, thanks so much for the follow.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
And if you're not already subscribed on YouTube, please go over there and subscribe as well. If you're not in the Discord,
part of the crew.
And the link, sorry.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
And if you're not in the Discord already and you want to join the Discord, I'd love to have you. Will you guys test out the links in my on my YouTube page as well as on my Twitch? I think they still work. They've worked recently. I just want to make sure they're up to date, because the Discord, it's an open invite. There's no, like, you have to get a new invite or anything. I will put a command into the stream alerts eventually. But let's see if here, hold on. We'll just go to view my channel. So if you view my channel and you go right here, view all links. There's the link to the Discord. There's the link to the Twitch. Here's my Twitter. I also need to add my Blue Sky on there because I recently started using that just for SC. I only do SC on Twitter and Blue Sky. It's really just mostly follow other content creators and the developers. But that link is right there, and I'm pretty sure it should still work. And then on Twitch, hold on. Actually, here we'll just go to Twitch. It's muted. Look, there's me. If you scroll down, where is it? Right here. Under the About part, there's a link to my YouTube, a link to the Discord, and a link to the Twitter as well. So if you want to join the Discord, if you want to click on one of those and just let me know once you join us that it worked, I'd appreciate it. But thank you so much for oh gosh, somebody subbed this evening. I really appreciate the sub. I know there's a lot of new people hanging out here this evening. And again, I really appreciate you guys. The talking with you guys in chat has been really awesome. A lot of new faces, a lot of really good points being made. Really good discussion. Oh gosh, lost my train of thought. Discord lane worked. Awesome. Thanks so much. Oh gosh, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. We did get because there are a bunch of you guys. I got to make one last plug at the end. I stream for charity. I keep no money monetization for myself. Any money that I make off of YouTube, whether it's from YouTube or Twitch, whether it's from ads or subs or whatever it's called on YouTube. I don't even have any of that on YouTube. I just started streaming to YouTube. So just the ad revenue. All that I donate to Stack Up. If you want to learn more about Stack Up, put !charity in chat or !stack up in chat, and you can donate directly to Stack Up via my Tiltify link and check out their page. I am a veteran. I'm a former infantry marine. That's the 0311 part. And I'm a current Army National Guard flight paramedic. I have PTSD, and this is my therapy. You guys are my unpaid therapists. Thank you for your service. But that's what Stack Up does, is they connect veterans like me and members of the military with video games and gaming communities to combat the effects of PTSD and being deployed or stationed overseas and away from your friends and family and your support groups. I believe in that mission, obviously, because I'm partaking in it, and this is how I stay mentally and psychologically healthy and well regulated and balanced. I see a therapist too, but this is what works for me, and I think it'll work for a lot of other people like me. And so I support their mission. We are your therapist. Maybe we should get your money back. Well, you guys are free. It's a great fucking deal. Yeah. But so if you're interested in supporting that just by being here and hanging out with me, or if you come and come and join me when I play in the evenings. I try to almost never play by myself. So I always post the events in my Discord. So if you're looking for a group to play with, I always make hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. At this time, come join me. And I can usually, gather together a group of, anywhere from 4 to 10 people. And I usually do that at least once a week, if not multiple times a week. Sometimes I'll do a 0 to hero as well, because I have one of those accounts. But it's usually, but I also play co-op games as well. So sometimes I'll be like, I feel like playing Starship Troopers or Helldivers or some other co-op game that recently came out. Well, you do get what you pay for. So, realistic expectations, Cindy. Yeah. But yeah, that's all I have for this evening. Just this one segment, but it's kind of a long one. I appreciate you guys all sticking around. Thank you so much for all the support. Oh, that's what I was going to do. I've got the streams up on, let's see, there's 28 people right now on Twitch, and on YouTube, there is 17 people watching right now. and it's been 18 people watching. So this is a record for me. For most people watching the podcast, watching the stream without having been rated by another content creator. So thanks again so much for all the support. We are going to find someone to raid on Twitch. I don't even know if that's a thing on YouTube. This is only my second time streaming to YouTube, so I've got a lot to learn. But if you're watching on Twitch, we're going to find someone to raid. I always make it a point to pay it forward and send the love. So let's find someone to raid. Who's playing Star Citizen right now? Anyone I know? Ooh, Meathead Militia's playing. They're a good dude. Oh, they're playing Windrose. Ooh, with drops enabled. Darth Wookie. Does anyone have any suggestions before I pick someone of who we should raid, who we should show some support for? Oh, thanks so much, Lisa, for I really appreciate the support. Peanut Rust server? Yeah, 100. This is the 100th episode. Thanks again, Sandy. Really appreciate it. All right, we'll just whoops. Let's pick someone to raid. We'll do Meathead Militia. They're playing Windrose. Do you guys mind if we I don't know what Peanut Rust is. What's that? Yeah, yeah, Tree had to read the long ones. If you guys don't mind, we're gonna raid Meathead Militia. I've raided them when they were playing Star Citizen. Good person, and they are playing Windrose. I don't know if you guys have seen Windrose. I haven't had a chance to try it out, but it's a Age of Sail piracy MMO RPG that has a lot of potential. Looks really cool. So let's go, and he's got drops enabled. So let's do that. So let's go ahead and start the raid now. And 3, 2, 1. Raiding now. All right. Cheers. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks again so much. Have a good night. I'll see you soon.